Welcome to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters. Money on Tap is where we bring out the professionals, experience, and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this radio show. We look at all sides of the issue and bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table. My name is Seth Cressman, and I'm joined here once again with John Ryder and Ben Brayshaw. And hello, folks. Introducing Eric Morton from Vancouver, Washington, joining us here once again. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we have the East Coast here represented. We have the West Coast. We are doing all right today on all cylinders, that's for sure.
And evenly distributed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm not feeling so outflanked here this morning. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And, want to thank our podcast listeners. And if you are not a podcast listener, have heard about a podcast, that's another way that you can go and you can listen to our show. While you're there, subscribe to the podcast, Money on Tap. And that feed will come into you, and you can go and listen to all of our past shows, rate them, like them, comment, whatever you like there. You can also find us at Facebook 3D Investing or Twitter, BFG _ LLC is us on the Twitter world. And you know what? I think we have an interesting shoe this morning. Shoe. You guys still don't get the shoe.
No one gets it, Seth. No one gets it out here.
Oh, man.
I put my shoes on this morning. That's the only thing I know about a shoe.
That was the Ed Sullivan Show, the original Ed Sullivan Show. That's how he would say his shoe.
Who's Ed Sullivan?
Shoe.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So pop culture, that's not so pop. Maybe that's ancient pop culture.
Seth trying to connect with our audience.
They all get it, Seth. We just don't.
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm gonna put a pin in that. But it is fun. It's some of the conversations that I'm having now lately. I have to double check. I'm like, okay, do you know what I'm talking about when I say this band or that's the A Team or the Dukes of Hazzard? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, the answer is no. Most people, right? It's like, oh man, old.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have fun today because we've got a lot to talk about. Besides the Dukes of Hazzard, which I did go back and watch the original first episode, and you will not believe what they used to get away with in television. Just unbelievable. So we're going to move on from that. Anyways, the topic that we've mentioned in the past and often talk about with our clients is this huge wave of people that are retiring and are going to be retiring here in the next 20 plus years. And it's really a part of the title of the show, the Retirement Tsunami, which is happening right now.
Seth, as financial advisors, we are finding ourselves to be at a time in history like no other. We're actually in a period of time here in the United States where we see more folks than ever that are looking to retire. And because of this fact, there are both things that we as investors should be avoiding and also at the same time opportunities to take advantage of in this marketplace. So in this episode of Money on Tap, we would like to take some time to talk about the coming wave that we here as Americans are facing. The title of our show today, as Seth mentioned, is called The Retirement Tsunami. And being prepared for that tsunami is going to be very, very important for every one of our listeners. But before we get to this important topic, it's time for Money in the News.
Well, I got to tell you, we got some interesting articles this week, and a lot of it has to revolve around Amazon.
Right.
Have you ever heard of Amazon?
I have
John?
not. No. Tell me about that, Ben.
They sell books.
It's a book salesman. I don't want any more books. Take your company elsewhere. Yeah.
Amazon is just changing the way we think about business. Just the way we think about shopping, the way we think about our needs and meeting those needs. It's just changing the entire landscape of that.
Ben, it's like this. I'm thinking, I want to get a new TV for our living room. And I'm thinking, okay, so I could go jump in the car and go down to Costco. Take me about 25 minutes to go there and pick it up and come back. First, I'll have to pick it out. Or I could really just online go and get the same TV I'm looking for about the same exact price. It will be delivered to my house the next day. Or they're even talking about how they can deliver these things faster. So sometimes if you order it in the morning, you'll have it at night. So it is a crazy, crazy world that Amazon created here.
I'm going the other direction. We just had my sister's two youngest kids have November birthdays, and so we just celebrated their birthdays. And I told them that I'm going to give them Toys R Us gift cards.
Oh, old school. Old school.
Yeah, well, nobody understood that Toys R Us is no longer.
Oh.
Everybody for Christmas is getting Sears gift cards.
They didn't get the joke that those are invalid.
But thank you so much, Uncle Seth.
Was it Sears or JCPenney? I forget. Which one of them went out?
Well, Sears is just shedding a bunch of stores, and
JCPenney's has really done a spin turnaround.
Yeah,
though. They're doing
they are doing all right.
Yeah. Well, getting to our article, it's titled "The Prosperity Bomb of the Amazonian Invasion" by the Wall Street Journal, and I think what this whole Amazon is its own culture. There's this whole thing going on over in Seattle, which, basically Eric and Seth probably get more experience around it.
Sure.
But as an outsider, not understanding, there's people outside Amazon, downtown Seattle, literally protesting on a daily basis, they say, for one issue
one reason or another,
right? But what Amazon has done to that community has changed the entire landscape of how people live. I mean, they parked the headquarters right downtown. Was it 45,000 jobs created, separate from all of the business and infrastructure and restaurants and people eating? They said there's lines everywhere for stuff because everyone lives in the city.
Okay, so big story basically is that Amazon, over the last year and a half, 2 years, I guess they've been looking for new places for their headquarters. And so they finally decided that after looking at 240 different locations, from Boston to Portland to Hawaii to you name it, they decided that their two locations will be in Alexandria, Virginia, and in New York City. Yeah. So right downtown. So it is amazing how and basically what this article is talking about is talking about how this prosperity bomb that Amazon is setting off is just a crazy thing. I think it said in Seattle that there's a 27% increase in restaurants as a result of just Amazon coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy stuff. And it's causing a major issue when it comes to mass transit and all that. In fact, they're very, very concerned about that for New York City, because New York City, as we all know, the subway is not all that easy to ride, and it can be overcrowded. I think it's going to be another issue there as well, too.
Well, you're talking about 25,000 employees in each location.
Yes.
And that's significant. And maybe in comparison to the total population of New York City, that's a drop in the bucket. But, I mean, just in a very micro way, or, even depending on the size of your town where you live now, that can be huge. I mean, that's a really large number of new jobs moving into an area that are significant. I mean, these are high income earners that are moving in and changing the landscape of the real estate and all of the businesses that are there to that location.
I'm actually really surprised it chose New York. I mean, just the excess cost that they're going to, take on just for the people that have to work and live there. I mean, you have to pay the wage exponentially has to be so much higher for somebody than, like a more remote area. Like, I mean, they could have chosen Connecticut or New Jersey, and they would have probably saved, 15-20% in salary costs.
Well, I will say, obviously, when they made their decision, there's a lot of different factors that went into that. Probably a ton of different factors that we'll never know. But I think some of the main factors was how attractive did New York City make business for Amazon in New York City. I'm sure very, very attractive. And there's a number of different subsidies and tax breaks that they got in order to make that happen in both cities.
And John, I think you had mentioned earlier when we were talking that was this all just a ruse? It sounded like maybe they had planned for these locations and then threw it out there to all the cities to salivate over, and then they just ended up right where they were going from the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, competition does drive a lot,
and he knows that.
Yeah.
Mr. Poor Book Salesman Jeff Bezos knows that. Yes.
Oh yeah. One of the things that's interesting is about Amazon. I was thinking about this the other day. what would you compare Amazon to? I mean, in a brick and mortar like Walmart, right? Kind of in that same area, large. I mean, incredibly huge company. But one of the things that we hear so much about with a Walmart, it seems like it's the news all the time, is the wages, and there's no union, and there's kind of that employee partnership that they have is it gets a lot of attention versus Amazon, who's got a distribution center over here in Hillsborough, and their starting salary or wage is $15 an hour. And so, I mean, I think they're really changing the landscape in several different ways. Now, they don't employ nearly as many people at a distribution center as they might, like, say, the Walmarts that are scattered throughout Hillsborough and Forest Grove and Beaverton. But that's, I don't know.
Well, it is a whole different world. I was just in a retail store the other night. I was in Bob's Stores in Nashua here in New Hampshire, and it was really, really dead in there. And I was just talking to the lady behind the desk, and she said, you will not believe this, she said, but it's obviously going to get busier next week. But she said, we just had a ton of people just put in their notices saying that they're not going to be available. So unemployment being so low, it's very, very difficult for these people for these companies to find people to actually work in them. She said, and as we walked out, she said, hey, if you know anyone that needs a job, send them over our way because we have a ton of openings here. So,
yeah, I think that's the thing, right? I mean, New Hampshire is one of the least. It has 3 of the least recessionary cities. I think it's top 10 in America because there's so much trust fund money here and so forth. And so we usually don't have a huge. When the economy drops, it hurts, but it's not the same. Yeah. We don't have a real perspective on that. But I would say unemployment in New Hampshire is so astronomically low. It's crazy. I mean, finding someone to actually work, it's just there's not enough bodies here to do the work.
Right.
I mean, even if everyone, we're close. I mean, I don't know if we're under at 1% or if we're close to 100% employment. I mean, it's got to be pretty darn
if you want a job, you can get it. Recently, I was talking to an owner of a Dunkin' Donuts, and he has several of them, several of being 10 or 12, and he says, you know what, I can expand and I can make more of them if we need any more Dunkin' Donuts here. I don't know that we do, but he's like, yeah, I can totally do that. The problem is we can't find employees to work in these places. He said, I have a hard enough time in our own branches being able to staff it outwardly rather than even getting new ones.
Yeah.
So,
well, this definitely creates a problem. But I think honestly, I'm looking at the Amazon decision, and I don't necessarily know that everything was above board here.
Yeah, well, hey, there's a lot of talk about that.
It rarely is.
Yeah.
It rarely is.
Yeah, you can't tell me that in Washington, basically it's Washington D.C. Basically in New York City, there wasn't a lot of who knows what went on to a lot of these decisions.
Right. It's like, hey, listen, guys, you aren't giving us the deal we want. We're going to go look at some other cities, and then you come back and you sweeten your pot.
You come with your best deal. Yeah. So.
I think that's going to lead us into the second article that we had here was basically the Amazon's golden fleecing was what it was titled, and that was a Wall Street Journal article this last week by the editorial board that goes into some of the what's behind the scenes in influencing Amazon to make the decisions that they did to land where they did. And, the competition, finding this second headquarters, beyond, Seattle, just had it just set off a what do you want to call it? Like a bunch of rabid people or townships to be able to try to influence and, create, incentivize the best deals possible. And they talk about comparing this in Google or other companies that have landed in other locations and how there was just a significant discrepancy in what those offers were. Like they just got the world handed to them in the scenarios that they're moving into.
Well, these are big decisions, right? So, basically, New York City gave Amazon, $325 million essentially to come. To come. I mean, that's coming right out of,
So they're buying business.
They're buying the business, right? But when you look at the Prosperity Bomb article that we had to begin with, and I wanted to just jump back to that because just the housing price increase based on Amazon, because basically a lot of people are living downtown Seattle is what they were basically saying to begin with. But then some of those people are, having families, having more kids, and then they want a house and they want to start moving to the suburbs. And there was an over 12% increase in housing values they're citing it because of Amazon, right? And they're saying that they were basically number one in the country until I think somewhere in California had started to outpace them a little bit, but that's pretty impressive. So what's happening is these cities are looking at this saying, hey, if we bring Amazon in, the overall business infrastructure is going to rise because of the culture it brings. The housing prices are going to rise. Housing prices rise. We're going to charge a price per thousand. We're going to be able to tax more on those dollars. Overall, we're going to make money from that. So I wonder what actuarial table was figured out that $325 million was the right number, that New York's still going to make money on having Amazon come.
You know what, Seth? You said something about this. You said that these are big dollars that are coming in. It is true. It says here the average, they have 25,000 new jobs coming in at each location in New York City and in Virginia. The average salary is $150,000 a year. That is huge for 25,000 jobs. That is just unbelievable when you think across the board. Some, of course, are a lot higher than that, and some are a lot lower than that. But it's just an amazing amount of money and cash influx coming in as far as incomes.
And I think it's interesting to take a look at that demographic as it moves into, well, the example of Seattle where they moved into. It was not a nice neighborhood. Yeah. The value of the real estate values were not going north, and when you move a demographic into an area there, there's two things. A, it does increase the value of the real estate. People come in and start putting a lot of money into the infrastructure as well as the things that the neighborhoods. But it also has the other side of it too that people are concerned about, where those were affordable neighborhoods that people no longer can afford, right? And that's a common story here in Portland all the time, where we had those neighborhoods that just got gentrified and updated, and now the real estate has gone through the roof, and people just can't afford to live where they used to, and that does push them into other locations. But it's that's less to do with it than the the increase of the salaries in those areas, or the taxability of those salaries as well.
And I think the move to Virginia also has a little to do with the political environment.
Maybe just a little.
Just a touch. There, people talking about taking over the company and passing this law and that. So they, they're right around. They're in the neighborhood, so they can make their message known.
I was just looking at the subsidies. The Amazon got a grant of $325 million from the Empire State, but their subsidies were $1.5 billion.
I know, it's hard to
billion. I just saw that. I was like, that's $1 billion. It's like
that's like the lottery. That's like the lottery,
right?
Yeah, seriously, that's like that's hilarious. So, and then Virginia, it's just the infrastructure improvements were $23 million to bring them in. That's a big deal. That's amazing. Amazon's going to change these states, and I think if you're an investor in those states, there's some opportunity around that. And I think strategizing what long term that might be, whether it's real estate or this, that, there's opportunities there for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely going to strengthen Amazon really having the bi-coastal and the north and kind of that northern and central southern locations dividing up their headquarters. It's going to be phenomenal for that company, what they're going to be able to bring to the next couple of years.
Well, this is kind of a little bit of their structure, which is, I know we're spending a lot of time on these articles, but a little bit of their structure is having warehouses all over the country instead of the old structure of having warehouses, big warehouses in the central part of the country and distributing left and right, essentially north south. So they're basically trying to meet that quick demand by all the technology. We've chatted about that in the past.
We have
on
about
shows.
The drones, the this, the that, yeah.
Yeah, how they know basically the statistical odds of you buying the next thing based on the last thing you bought, and so breaking up those pieces, it used to be like, hey, if we centralize everything into one location, we don't have overlap costs and so forth. But maybe there's something to really be learned here inside breaking up different pieces of a company into different locations moving forward in our economy, just because of the demand.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here at Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Also, head out to your your local podcast venue. Is that possible that it's local? Anyways, it's a podcast. We do it as well. You can go to whatever station you like to podcast at. Find us at Money on Tap. Like us, rate us. We'll have a conversation there as well. So thanks a lot, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is John Ryder, a partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. 10,000 Americans are turning 65 every day, and planning a successful retirement today is more challenging than ever, with a roller coaster stock market, political and economic uncertainty, and so many unknowns when it comes to the escalating costs of healthcare. Let us show you how we utilize the 3D method of investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Using our experience, let us help you plan for a successful retirement. Now is the right time to start getting help. Give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices across the country. We would love the opportunity to meet with you. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us, and we welcome you to our offices. Call 855-226-8551 today.
More Money on Tap in just a moment. On this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, Seth, Ben, and John have a discussion about wills and the alarming percentage of boomers who have neglected to have a will in place.
Statistically, 44% of boomers still don't have a will. 44%.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, but 57% people don't think they're going to have any money to pass on. So they're saying, well, why waste the money on a will because I'm going to spend it all anyways.
Well, that's true, because then you're right. The 35% plan to spend whatever money they have left on themselves. But, there's always the what if scenario. Like, what if I don't make it to that day where I've just completely cashed out?
We have people, they walk through the door. I sit down with people and they're like, you know what? If I die and there's money there and someone's got to figure it out, well, let it be their problem. I don't want to worry about,
make them work for it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it could be more efficient, and you save a lot of money that you've worked really hard for to pass on to your family or friends or charities or whatever. And they're like, I don't care. I'm not going to care because I'm not going to be here.
Sometimes it's interesting to get all these different perspectives that we get a chance to get a bird's eye view of. And we have different perspectives ourselves. I know that when we're talking about our own families and our own family's plan, John is different from Ben, is different from me in how we're planning what our intentions are. And so all across the board, no judgment, people, just interesting to find out what the numbers are.
I think one thing that's not monetary around doing proper estate planning and doing these documents is preserving the family unit. Because if you leave this thing just
not buttoned up,
you're going to create a huge amount of strife and stress inside the family unit. Even if you don't have an I love you will, as they call it, to your spouse, it can be frustrating. It's complicated. And if you don't make this thing neat and clean, it's just going to create unnecessary problems inside your family. Who cares how much money they do or don't get? If you don't want them to,
they all hate each other after you're gone.
Yeah. What did you really accomplish? I think that's the non-monetary thing to focus on in this area.
Thanks for joining us for this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, with great tips from the pros in three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Now here's more Money on Tap with Seth, Ben, and John.
Welcome back. You are listening to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters. Money on Tap is where we bring out the professionals, experience, and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning, and that is what we're doing here today. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And, I love to just come back to the same thing and say it again, is that the podcast, if you're not a podcaster, or if you are a podcaster, we are at Money on Tap, so we can deliver this quality show to you in those venues. Like us, subscribe to us. We appreciate the comments, and we thank you for listening today. We're going to
we're going to dive.
We're going to jump into our show. We're going to jump into the main topic of our show, where we're going to talk and chat about the retirement tsunami that is coming our way.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, the topic of our show today comes from a woman named Kara Stein. Now, Kara Stein may not be a name that everyone recognizes out there, but she's a very powerful person in our industry because she's the commissioner for the SEC, or the Securities and Exchange Commission. And on Tuesday, October 16th of this year, she was giving a talk to the Brookings Institution, where the topic of the speech was the new American dream, retirement security.
I think when we're listening to her speech, right, and kind of going through that, she talks about, actually, to quote her, I have it right here. It says, "The retirement crisis is a tsunami that is rapidly approaching. We can already see it, and indeed, we are starting to feel its effects. Americans are having to work past traditional retirement age," Stein said. Now, I have been using the word retirement tsunami for a long time, John.
So she probably heard you. And she gave her.
She's probably plagiarizing me.
Yes.
But I think it just reinforces the fact that here's somebody who's
in the know.
She's in the know,
yeah,
big time, and she understands what's going on, and honestly, really appreciating the SEC. I wouldn't normally think that those things come in our right, but.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But it shows an awareness of what's going on in our industry more so than I probably give them credit for having, because it is so huge. Understanding the intricacies of something that vast and how it's going to affect a lot of different areas is really important. But she goes on to talk about, the number of bankruptcies for those over age of 65 has increased dramatically. The size and speed of the tsunami is likely to increase and is getting closer and closer to us. Our population is aging, and the cost of medical care, an important factor for retirees, is increasing. We must address this problem before we are collectively underwater. And this is just one area of the impact of the financial world. Because of, and we don't talk about the debt crisis that exists inside
none of that talk is
inside
going
the
on
baby
now.
boomer world,
No,
right?
no.
They were probably one of the first generations that started taking on 30-year mortgages, and it used to be you bought your cash, then you did a 20-year mortgage was unheard of, and then a 30-year mortgage, which is commonplace today, is unheard of, and now there were actually 40-year mortgages.
Yeah.
And that was wasn't even an offer out there at one point.
Wow.
And so people are entering retirement for the first time with debt that they never had before.
Well, we're seeing strains on our systems, from Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid. But interesting article that we're going to feature and just talk a little bit about. It's entitled "Growth in Retiring Baby Boomers Strains U.S. Entitlement Programs." Census projections see a rapid increase in retiree age Americans, putting pressure on Social Security. And it basically states this fact: by 2017, there were 25 Americans 65 and older for every 100 people in their working years, according to the census figures. The ratio would climb to 35 retiree age Americans for every 100 of working age by 2030. So what does that mean? What does that mean for our retirees out there? We've often said this on the show here, is that we have 10,000 people a day that are turning 65. That's a lot of birthday candles. But not only is that a lot of birthday candles, that is causing a major, major strain on some of the things that were set up years and years ago with a whole different it's a whole different impact now of what that's having on Americans today.
Ben's grabbing the calculator.
Ben, what are you seeing there?
Well, I was just coming up with the fact that my calculator can't come up with how many birthday candles you need for 65-year-olds, 10,000 a day for 365 days.
650 million. I don't know.
It's going to be close to that. So, I mean, that's just it's amazing when you put that. But that 10,000 number is still growing. It's not a stagnant number. It's actually a growing number. I heard that it starts approaching almost double that at some point in time.
Yeah,
like at its peak.
Yeah, we've talked about this several times, and I don't remember. This is probably going back about a year that we were discussing this, and one of the things that popped out to me at that time, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but was the growth of that demographic. And we understand, like, as more people are aging, they're aging into this over 65 area and this retirement age, but there was really the baby boomer population that we would call them was growing, and typically, I mean, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, except for we do have that's what the demographics are saying, is that not only are we having a ton of people moving into this over 65, but that demographic is growing as well in another part of that strain. And I think that that's interesting to try to take a look at those macroeconomics there.
Yeah, so people right now are having less and less kids right now, so there's less and less workers supporting. If you have, people that are the overwhelming majority of Americans are starting to retire, they have less and less kids out there that are actually able to support the programs that are supporting these folks. So that's going to be a major problem in our workforce.
We here at Money on Tap are not part of that less and less kid.
Ben, what do you have? 12 kids, Ben?
Procreation, folks.
I have 4.
We're trying to make up for the rest of the population that's opting out. Well, I gotta retire somehow, and that's my plan. And I'm going back. Yeah. No, I'm going back to that turn of the century where really there wasn't retirement. People, this is a new concept that we brought in. Kind of more of that mid-century here, where we got Social Security and we got all these other things at Medicare, things that we Medicaid, these entitlements that we have that are fantastic and amazing, and they really allow people to, have something in their later years. But before, that just wasn't a part of that wasn't a part of the reality. People had saved and scrimped and pulled it together, but a lot of the time there was a dependence on children and grandchildren to really help support grandparents and the older family members.
I listened to Marcy Roselle a number of different times speak. She's a CNBC contributor. She's an economist. She's got all sorts of degrees. Super intelligent woman. And one of her talks that I listened to, she was talking about how and with all the news about Trump and the wall and this, that, and the other thing, she was saying that at some point in time there'll be so many retirees, and the demand for needs and what will be going on in this country will be wanting people to come across our borders. It was just an interesting perspective on a concern, right? You have a concern of people like, hey, listen, illegal immigrants coming over, how do we deal with that? She said, we will be expediting because there's just so much demand. You think about it, when you're retired, and this was an interesting point that I don't know if she made this point or if I kind of deduced that from her conversation, but just kind of like the over 65 retired person who, needs their lawn mowed, who might have used to mow it themselves, right? And then, or they need the boiler work done or a little bit of work on their house. They need the kitchen redone. There's just not enough people out there to do that. And the demand for those things will probably increase when people are retired because there's things that they want done. They have time to think about, I really want to get this done. I want to get this project done. I thought that was an interesting point considering the climate of, this was years ago. This was probably 3-4 years ago.
Oh, she's talking?
Yeah, she was talking about that. So,
there's a book out there that we just want to talk a little bit about. The book is called The Next America. It's written in 2016 by a guy named Paul Taylor and the Pew Research Center. And it was updated with nearly 100 pages of new text and charts and all. But it basically is saying this: the America of the near future will look nothing like the America of the recent past. And it says this, and I think it's pretty interesting, brings out some good points. America is in the throes of 2 simultaneous demographic overhauls. We're en route to becoming a majority non-white country. At the same time, a record share of us are going gray. As a result, generation gaps have opened up in our political and social values, our economic well-being, our family structures, our racial and ethnic identities, our gender norms, and our religious affiliations, and our technology use. So really, our country is changing in unbelievable ways. And really the question is, how are we going to change with it when it comes to doing what we help people do on this show, and that's helping people retire, and help people retire in the most efficient way possible. Because things are changing, and I know, guys, we've had a lot of talks regarding pensions and pension systems, how they're changing. It used to be years ago that you would have a pension in order to support your retirement. Your grandfather, my grandfather, they might have worked at one place for 30 years, and then they would be supported by a pension that would take care of them. But what has changed really in our country is the fact that we've really gone to a 401k environment where people are basically the onus is on them to put money aside into their retirements. One thing that we're seeing here is that the pensions are certainly aware of the past. In fact, state pension funds out there are having a very, very difficult time keeping up with recent market volatility and all. There's huge liabilities out there that are unfunded, and so you look at this, people being able to rely on their pension is certainly a thing of the past. So really, what we do when we're meeting with people is actually help them design a pension program for themselves, so that they can actually support themselves and take care of themselves. But there's really with the shift of what's going on in America today, there are many seniors out there that are having a very, very difficult time even now being able to make ends meet. And that's one of the things that Kara Stein talked about, Ben, there was talking about how that there are many Americans here that are actually going bankrupt, which is kind of sad. So you have people that have been working their whole lives, they're 65 plus, and in fact, there's even a recent article by the AARP that was talking about this. It says that the headline was, "Far more older Americans are going bankrupt. Rising numbers point to widespread money troubles," the study finds. And so basically we're seeing a skyrocketing of people that just really can't afford to make ends meet. Well, they're not getting increases on the Social Security. The market's been volatile. Perhaps their investments weren't managed well. And so they're really running into very, very difficult times.
I think that's really good points there, John. Talking with you guys, this is all in your wheelhouse, most of these articles, and my anxiety increases every time you read that line about in retirement, bankruptcies are increasing, and I'm thinking about my parents and trying to plan appropriately for my kids. And I got to tell you, the bottom line, it seems like, you need to take control of your destiny. You can't rely on the other, the company. You can't rely on the government, the Social Security. Those things are not going to be enough to supplement. And so as my anxiety increases, I need to rely on guys like you to give me some tips on how to get out of that and be consistent.
Yeah, and so I think it's, Eric, I think it's kind of a double-pronged fork in a way, because I think a lot of times one thing we're talking about with Social Security is certainly having troubles keeping up. You're not seeing cost of living increases. But at the same time, you see many retirees that aren't necessarily making some wise decisions when it comes at or near retirement. In fact, there's a study out there that talks about the percentage of older Americans that are carrying debt into retirement has increased over the past few decades. And like Ben, as to your point earlier, you're saying, hey, years ago, if your parents or your grandparents were going to buy a house, they'd pay cash for it, which sounds unbelievable in today's environment, or they'd finance it over a short period. But now you have many people, they don't think twice of refinancing a mortgage when they're 55 years old for a 30-year time frame. Yeah,
it's honestly very concerning. I mean, we've worked with people some people have cash flow, and they have a lot of cash flow. They do have pensions. They do have, annuities. They have all sorts of different things for creating income. They have a bond portfolio, whatever it is. And they have a lot of cash flow. And I remember working with one couple, and they were looking to, either rent or buy a place. And when it came down to the amount of cash flow they had, it made sense for them to finance at like 65 years old a 30-year mortgage. And we ended up talking to them, just saying, based on your situation, consider this is the cheapest rent payment you can have. You are building equity, but we're not going to refinance it again. It's a low interest rate environment. And that was just one methodology that we used to solve a debt income ratio scenario to help them have the lifestyle they wanted. And it was not a luxurious lifestyle. We were really helping them kind of get out of a bind and a couple other things. So is there a time and place to do that? Yeah, but it is happening more and more frequently, and people are actually taking on debt in retirement, buying a second home, and they're counting on their investments to produce enough income. And we're one stock market plunge away from those things not being a successful outcome for some people.
Yeah, kind of going back to some of the interesting pieces that are the data around the pension funds. And I know this is a piece of the pie for a significant part of this population, because so much of the time that the baby boomers have spent, in the workforce has been, the idea is to go to work for, GE or, you name it. You go to work for the company, they have a pension. right? Or you go to work for the state, you're a teacher, you have a pension, you're a firefighter, there's all these different industries that pensions were the way that people looked to retire. It's just one of those areas that there's pressure in as well with, 2.6 trillion in assets. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And we've talked about how to relate how huge that number is in terms of, dollars today. If you were to relate that back into like a time equation, and I forget what the numbers were there. What is $1 trillion in terms of like days, or how did that work again?
So the way that goes is, basically I use the time period of seconds. So if you were to put 1 million seconds together, it's about 11 days. And when you put 1 billion seconds together, it's 31 years.
Gives us some perspective, doesn't
and when
it?
you put 1 trillion seconds together, it's 31,000 years.
Oh my gosh!
And
so,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so $2.6 trillion in these pension funds, right? And the liabilities are huge, of $4 trillion, and that's going back into like 2016. But trying to keep up the rates of return within those pensions has been one of the real challenges and headwinds that they've had. Now they're about 300 billion, from the prior year down in what they need to really be able to fully fund those pensions. So there's sticking points in this tsunami, that being one of them, and one of the ways that traditionally people have looked to retire. And a pension typically for most people means some kind of a guarantee of income, but we also know that there's precedents around those to say it may not necessarily work out that way. As much as we certainly do not hope at it, you know what I mean? We really always want those things to work out. It's about preparing and understanding that may not be the way that everything does.
These pensions are bad. I mean, it's bad news, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there. We've talked about how pensions are failing. We've talked about the states where the pensions are failing. We've talked about the unfunded liabilities, and we're talking about 2.6 to 4 trillion, all these numbers. But the biggest issue is, honestly, I mean, our national debt is 20 trillion.
And growing, yeah.
And growing daily.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not getting paid off, yeah.
But the unfunded liabilities, which include Medicare and Social Security and all these other peripheral items that we have out there, I mean, we're talking about 100 trillion of unfunded liabilities that we have no money out there for. And we forget that taxes are going to be the only, there's only two ways, right, to pay for debt. That's either to increase how much you make or to reduce how much you spend. And so our government makes money by taxing us, and they reduce what they spend by cutting the benefits of the U.S. person, right? They cut what we get. They don't get a happy camper when we increase our taxes, and they definitely don't when, they start cutting the benefits of the people who need them. So I was talking with somebody the other day. I was having lunch with this gentleman who we'd never met before, and we just started talking, and it got very political very quick. And I just said, it's the TV that you walk in. You talked about TV earlier about, Costco and buying a TV and Amazon and all that stuff. We all feel like we deserve the 60-inch TV. We're kind of taught that, or felt like we should have a big TV. But the truth is that in that example, most of America can only afford the 20-inch TV. And we're not taught the responsibility. We're not taught the control on the spendability of what we have in our assets and controlling those things. And that's the problem. And I'm at fault for that too. I'm sitting here saying to myself, sometimes I buy the too big TV. Okay. Like I'm guilty, folks, guilty as charged. And I'm not, there's no judgment on this. We all do this on some level. We live in this very difficult society where we all feel like we should have these things, and we work towards them. And yet we don't understand how to balance our budget because we don't want less. We're not willing to take on not getting as much or how much we give. Again, guilty as charged. I don't want to pay any more taxes than I have to, and I don't want to get any less than I want. So how as a country do we deal with those $100 trillion of unfunded liabilities?
We're going to get into that a little bit in our next show. In fact,
we're going to solve that.
Yeah, we're going to solve it. But no, we actually we're going to talk about some strategies that we can take as investors in order to help save ourselves some tax dollars. So if you look at as Ben was talking about with the the national debt there, and you look at where we are with income tax rates and all that, we're at a fairly low, it doesn't feel like it, but we're at a fairly low period of time in history. And you think about the controls that the government will have in the future on being able to increase those taxes to us. And we have to be very, very careful. But what we really want to do is we want to make sure that we're spending time making sure that we're making the right choices when it comes to our investments so that we can actually have perhaps some tax-free streams of income in the future that could make a huge difference for us when it comes to our retirement income.
I hope you guys will be okay with me bringing in some real-life examples of some clients of mine and some things that they've asked me to help them with, and maybe I can throw that to the panel of experts, not only for myself but also for those clients. So.
I was thinking you were going to say examples of actually solving the $20 trillion in debt that we've accumulated as a country, but that works well too, and I really appreciate you bringing it home there, Eric. Eric Morton, Vancouver, Washington, with us today, folks. If you're hearing a new voice with us, that's him, and he's heading up the property and casualty for Brayshaw Financial Group, and we're excited to have him on here with us today at Money on Tap. We're going to take a quick break. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Also, go out into that podcast world and find us at Your Money on Tap or Money on Tap, and subscribe, like, rate, all of the above, and we're glad to have you listening today. Thanks a lot.
More Money on Tap in just a moment.
Hi, my name is Seth Crustman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, and if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
Now back to Money on Tap with Ben Brayshaw, John Ryder, and Seth Crustman.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professional experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And we're at Facebook at 3D Investing, at Twitter at BFG_LLC. But one of our favorite ways to connect with you is out in the podcast world. If you are a podcast listener, subscribe to Money on Tap, like the show, comment, interact. All of those things are available there. If you're new to podcasting, typically iTunes is a place where people like to go if they're using Macintosh or Apple products. Macintosh, man, that made me sound old. And Stitcher is another place out there for people if you're new.
Now you sound young. Stitcher, that sounds young now. So good.
Yeah, there you go. SoundCloud is another one. Even though any one of those, anyways. There's lots of ways to find us in the podcast world, and subscribing is one of the ways that you can get up to date and updates as we release more podcasts and radio shows. So, hey, you know what? We're going to jump back in. Here we are, the Retirement Tsunami, talking to Eric Morton. Eric, joining us at Brayshaw Financial Group these days, and you know what? He brings an independent planning perspective to insurance in property and casualty. And you mentioned before we took a break that you had some real life scenarios that you thought would apply. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently was talking with a business owner that is now 3 years in the industry that he's working in. And, you from time to time when we're going over a list of assets to try to protect on the liability side, personal liability umbrellas that we talked about in some prior podcasts, these accounts that people forget about are out there, and they may be smaller, they may be a little bit larger, but he had a pension that it's been, he left his job 3 years ago, has a pension that he probably won't collect on until, he's 60, probably 30 years from now. I'm trying to guess what his age is. And they keep offering him this lump sum payout, kind of goes in with some of what we were talking about with the lottery, I suppose. So they want to get that liability off the books. So they're offering this amount, $30K. And I'd love to hear what your advice is to someone like that has a little pot of money. The easy answer, of course, is to leave it in there. But what happens if that goes away? Is there? I never thought about it before, but what if that just entirely, defaults?
It's funny. We've done some shows on this, and people can reference back to some of that. But depending on what the person's situation is and kind of what's going on, we'll just do an evaluation of what the offer is, how much the promise is, and see if it makes any sense. I will say that we've seen like the state of New Hampshire pension used to pay out a phenomenal rate. I mean, I think it was a really good income, and it has dropped way off the table. I mean, the offers for the buyouts. I mean, I was like, this isn't even. I mean, they're literally asking people to leave.
Yeah, and the fact is, if there's a pension offer being put together, there's a reason why that there's a pension offer being put in place. It typically means that there's certainly a problem. They want to see if they can offload those liabilities, those future liabilities for them. And in many cases, it makes sense to go ahead and take that because it could be. Eric, you're asking, hey, what happens if this pension system runs out of money? Well, the money stops.
Yeah,
the money stops.
And that's what happens. Well, and it depends on if you're collecting or not. Because if you're collecting the pension benefit, the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp, which is just another insurance company, they're supposed to take over. But that's where all these reforms are coming into place because you can apply for that, and there's not enough money to back all these pensions inside there either. So there's lots of issues going on, and I think honestly, some of these pension things, depending on your situation, if it's a really fair offer, depending on the strength of the company and what they're going to do, because you can't control how much that company is going to put aside for each future new pension that someone's contributing, right? I mean, that pension guarantee for everyone, that pension guarantee, I use that loosely, that promise to pay is only as good as the next dollar they put away or the next dollar they earn in proration to what they're going to have to pay out in some future event and how long that person lives. See, that's the whole thing. No one knows how long everyone's going to live, and everyone's living so much longer than was ever projected when they started these pensions 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And actually, what prompted this was he had decided, a few years ago to just let it ride, and then he gets a letter that it's changing administrators or companies on it, and so he was just like, "Oh boy, now got to do some research on this and decide if I should just take this offer."
Well, there is no doubt that we as Americans are facing challenging times, in the future. The whole purpose of this show, however, is not just to, wallow in difficult times or highlight headlines to cause fear and anxiety. We're here to help our listeners, and we want to take a proactive approach and take those proactive steps to help you take control of your finances, to help you save in the right places, to take steps to help you avoid running out of money in your retirement. And on the show, we're going to spend some time talking about all of those proactive steps and in the next show as well on how to get things in order and not just become a statistic around this tsunami that we're experiencing in these retirement years. It's been a lot of fun, believe it or not, a tough topic, but we've had a ton of fun on the show today. You've been listening to us here at Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Thanks again, Eric Morton, joining us from Vancouver, Washington today. now with Brayshaw Financial Group at our property and casualty division there and heading that up. Ben, John, thanks for watching,
guys.
Thank
you so much.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.